So mostly we live with not the other person like an experience. We live with the other person like a myth that we've constructed. And for the most part, our relationships reflect the quality that you could expect in being related to a myth. It's like going into the restaurant and eating the menu. That's the way it's like when you're related to a myth. So there is this possibility that the domain in which you hold the possibility which relationship is the domain of experience. And if you hold the possibility of relationship in the domain of experience, the quality of your relationship will reflect what's allowed in the domain of experiencing. And I think you can see, out of the little example that I gave you, that what shows up in a relationship like quality is very different when you're relating to the experience of the other person as contrasted when you're relating to your myth about the other person. The different quality. I didn't say better. I mean, his wife could have been one of those people who agreed with everything he said. Then he would have come in and say, look, I live with this wonderful woman. Got these brilliant insights and this incredible intelligence in which she can see that everything that I say is right. You think the relationship in terms of its quality would be an iota different than living with the myth that he was married to a pushy woman. I don't think so. Oh, the story would be different, but no different in the quality. So relationship is a space of possibility, a clearing in which things show up. If where you're holding that possibility, that relationship is in a narrative or a story, or in your myth about the other person, then the quality of your relationship will be that which is allowed by the domain called story or myth. If you're holding that possibility, which relationship is in the domain of experience, then your relationship will have the quality allowed by the domain of experience. It will be the kind of relationship which is shaped by presence rather than consideration. By what is present at the moment. By what's present. By what presences itself. Rather than by the history of the relationship, the story, the narrative of the relationship. All of that's pretty familiar to most of us. We all have at least some inkling about how to work in both of those domains. The invitation tonight is to take on relationship like a whole new space of possibility. To hold the possibility, the space of possibility called relationship, in a whole new space of possibility, like an opening like a freedom like an adventure, rather than like something you would know that worked out if it did. You see, I'm talking about being willing to give yourself the chance for relationship to live as a certain kind of mystery. I'm hesitant about the word mystery because it will do mischief for people. You know, God is a great mystery. Every time somebody answers the question, God, a certain kind of limit is placed on God like a possibility. So I'm saying God is a great mystery. I'm saying perhaps you could treat relationship as a great mystery in that same way, like a great opening, a great space of possibility, something you were willing to enter into without knowing the answer. Risky business. But we're really talking about relationship at a transformational level. For those of you for whom that's a new word, I'll give you an analogy. An analogy. And I'll use evolution to build the analogy. We're told that life began as a bit of protoplasm in a tropical sea, and add eons of time and has evolved to use up the whole space of possibility that the seas and water are, and finally you get life in every nook and cranny and every niche of the sea, and every place there's water, there's life. And that's evolution. It's a long, slow process requiring eons of time. But when the fish walks up on land, that is not evolution. Relatively, it happens in a moment, no time. And in the act of walking up onto the land, the fish brings forth eagles and elephants as a possibility. And so there's a whole new space of evolution. A whole new possibility for life by the simple act of walking from the water onto the land, and that's analogous to transformation. So relationship at a transformational level would be a whole new space of possibility. An adventure in the unfolding and the showing up like a presence of that which lived as a clearing first. A clearing, an opening in which elephants and eagles, the elephants and eagles of being related, could show up. Be clear, I'm not talking about some airy-fairy, well, we'll see how it works out. I'm talking about a deep and profound commitment, a declaration, a stand for the possibility of your relationship. A willingness to stand for the relationship and the possibility of the relationship with no evidence, as a matter of fact, even in the face of contrary evidence. Not being stuck with the relationship, not being confined by your word, when you get stuck by your word, when you get confined by your word, you have turned your word into a thing. One's word as one's word doesn't live like something with which to be beaten or confined. No, one's word lives like a freedom, like a possibility, like room in which to be. And yes, the pathways of expression are constrained. They're constrained by the number of arms and legs that you have. They're constrained by the rules of presence, because the possibility must presence itself within the domain of presence, which has a certain constraint to it. Interestingly, when you're willing for relationship, the possibility, the space of possibility which relationship is, to live in the domain of declaration and stand-taking, interestingly, you get back the other two domains at the same time. You get back the presence, the experience of being together, of being one with. You get back the experience of harmony, of partnership, of sharing. You get back the sense of being moved and touched. You get back the experience of respect and admiration. And you even wind up with a beautiful story to tell. I know you all don't want to miss that. So this is a strange evening. Because anything that comes out of this evening, that ain't it. The evening is of any value to you and me. It will show up as a new space of freedom and possibility in our relationship. It will show up like being empowered in our relationships with the sense of being able to create into the relationship. It'll show up like an enablement to make the relationship work. But I don't promise that it will show up like no problem, like no bad. I want you to determine whether tonight was valid for you. Not while you're sitting in the chair. You can't determine whether coaching was valid. At the time of the coaching, you determine whether coaching was valid in the game on Sunday. You tell by looking up at the scoreboard. They fire coaches who give brilliant talks and who know how to play football, but who don't wind up winning on the scoreboard. Unfortunately, this is a little bit more complex than football. But there is a certain parallel. That is to say, no matter how good a coach you are, you can't coach a quarterback with no commitment. No matter how good a coach you are, you can't coach a quarterback who doesn't play. See, if the guy never throws the ball, you can't ever tell whether the coaching made any difference in being able to get the ball caught. And there is that kind of parallel. See, if you walk out of this evening sitting back waiting to see what happened, well, let's see. Was I transformed? Well, you and I will have failed. We will have lost the game. the score will have gone against us. Because being transformed doesn't work that way. You see, you can't wait to see evidence for the possibility of a breakthrough in your relationships. No, never, not. Can't do it. You cannot see, there will be no evidence for a new space of possibility. The space of possibility evidences itself in the stand you take that there's a new space of possibility. And you take a stand like you walk off of a cliff. You do it. You don't wonder how to do it. You don't get instructions on how to do it. You do it whether you're afraid or not. You do it whether you know how or not. You just do it. The only evidence that you will have that there's been a transformation in your relationship is that you are taking the stand, not you are taking, you are the stand. That there's a new space of possibility for you to evolve into. A space where elephants and eagles are possible. There will be no other evidence. When you get her out of the dark room tonight, she will look the same. And worse, so will he. I don't mind her looking the same, but I have a little feeling for you ladies who have to go out with them or me who will look the same. But you know, I really love it. I love the edge on it. I love that there's no answer. I love that nobody else can do it. I love that you can't even be certain when you do it. And that's really being alive. That's like betting the rent. See, I can remember when I was doing that experiment with automobile racing, after a while I knew how to drive the car, more or less. And when I got ready for a race, when I was about to start in a race, I pretty much knew what it was like to drive the car around the track and what I would do and so on and so forth. But there was still the presence of a space of possibility of going beyond where I'd gone before. Which God knows I needed to do to have any chance of winning. And I'm left with that sense of possibility about relationships. And I want to share with you that if I could fill up that space of possibility with talk and description, I would hope that I would have the good sense not to do so. Because the real power of our being together is not in what I can explain to you of the unknown. Not what I can describe or talk about of the possibility. But in our being willing together to bring forth this space of possibility. That is, the event becomes a clearing for me for us both to take a stand in. Now, of course, like you, my whole life has been one long research project. And I've learned something about relating. I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a moment while I acknowledge some of the people who've allowed me to conduct the experiment in the possibility of relating in such a way that while I don't pretend to be an expert on the subject, I'm able to be with the subject in a way that empowers and enables others and myself. Because while I can't see all the faces in this auditorium, and I certainly can't see all the faces on the other side of the camera, I'm clear that all of the things which I am that are of any value to other human beings show up in the space of our relationship. That is to say, I owe the best part of my life to you. And for that, I am deeply grateful. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The material on these tapes was taken from the event, What is the Possibility of Relationship?, conducted by Werner Erhard on August 11, 1984. This tape was produced by Michael Portis for Werner Erhard and Associates.